layers from, as in it's a subclass of constraint layout. If for those who already know about Android, maybe they have worked with different layouts, linear layout. So constraint layout has been pushed forward to be the one that people should be using because it helps us in achieving more. At the same time, currently, for those who do animations, motion layout comes in to actually provide the best, because anything you've been doing in constraint layout can be done with motion layout. And motion layout also provides additional ways when it's coming to animating our views on the screen. So coming from a background where animation was actually tricky when it comes to doing it the manual way, the manual way we used to do it, where you had to actually write down the code to do the animations. And actually it wasn't the best, but yeah, it was working. Motion layout coming in was in tech, we actually computers, so we have to actually make things work, and then it makes work easier when it comes to animating. So previously we actually used to use transition managers and simple views animations, where you actually had to do the transitions. You actually had to understand the mathematics behind the animations, and then before you could achieve something, then it was quite a hassle. So motion layouts helps cycle view, maybe that kind, touching on a button, and then maybe moving a whole bunch of views in different directions. So coming in, it has helped, because doing the animation being tricky previously, and working with motion layout now makes it easier for you, and then it also broadens your mind, where you have a very big scope when it comes to doing the animations. And I'll be glad to start off where I'll be working on a very simple project to actually help you understand what motion layout is and actually how it works. And maybe I can share my screen for you all to see.
Yes, for sure.
I hope you can now see my screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
So for those who haven't been working with Android, this is Android Studio, and then we usually use activities when it comes to writing our code, and then you actually have layouts which are inside this package of resources. So before I can start,
Hello,
sorry.
Daniel. Sorry for the interruption.
Mhm.
Now, I'm asking, would you get a better way to zoom it so that ndio ikuwe more clear in a way, and zooming zoom out or whichever is
Okay,
zooming.
let me. You can see now. So actually, we use the resources down here to actually do our views, where here we actually use place our images, layout to design our layouts, Meetmap still about images, but then different dimensions, navigations about nav graph and stuff, and then values and stuff. For those who doesn't understand the colors and extra resources that we actually want. So I'll be working on a very simple project where basically, for those who doesn't know, a splash screen is the first screen that actually appears when, say, you're opening an application. Okay, okay. Hope you can hear me now. Okay, so the two screens that I'm going to work on, the splash screen here, I'm animating it with somehow a very simple animation, and then once it animates, it actually has to move to the next screen. So I'll try to show you the layouts, and the first thing first. I then, after creating the project, then I'll have this as my first activity, where the first activity comes with a layout named activity main. So accessing activity main, it has nothing but a view just to provide a place where I can display my fragments and stuff. And basically, it doesn't have much, and I'll not talk about it because there's no animation inside there. So thereafter, I created another fragment, which fragment acts as a view. The view that you're going to see, the page that you're going to see, is a whole fragment, which I created this fragment, and then the layout for it is called frag slash, where I'm displaying a very simple view, which is just an image and a small text about. Basically, it was a multimedia university talk, so I had to actually do it your way. So it's just simple as that, which is an image and a text view which displays a text. So this is actually the view that I'm going to animate when we're going to actually to get down into motion layout. And then thereafter, after the animation ends for this which is our splash screen, then it will navigate to a new fragment which I've named it the main fragment. This is where our project now starts off. Then from here I can do anything else. So this is just a simple view with an image, and then some text, and then some headings, and then some text which are scrollable, of which I'll also try and put some animations here so that we see the flow of how working with the motion layout is. And starting off, let me now start off to put my hands directly into motion layout. And then from the first layout, this is the layout, I'll start off by explaining where I said motion layout is a subclass of constraint layout. So before you can all work on anything, you actually need to understand, you actually need some basics on constraint layout. And this is a simple project I had actually placed. And for those who doesn't understand, in constraint layout, you have to actually to attach the views and then constrain them towards any feature that you, any object that you want. For this one, I've constrained it to the parent, and then for the text we have constrained it to the view, to the image. So its view is based on how the image view will appear. And since we are now moving to motion layout, then constraint layout plays a bigger role in this. And then to move into starting with motion layout, then I just have to navigate to this view on my right, sorry, and then I right click on it, and then convert to motion layout. So it will convert this view to a different one, which is motion layout, and then convert it to motion layout. Then after that, it will provide us a different view, where we are having the screen that we had actually created, which is our motion screen, a motion layout screen, the first one. And then the start is actually when the motion starts, explains it, shows the transition of when the motion starts, and then the end shows how it will appear when the motion ends. So currently nothing has been added here, so the start and the end is the same basically. And then this arrow here shows us the transition between the start and the end. And the start is basically how it appears before the transition starts, and then the end how it appears after the transition. So all my transitions or all my animations will be done between these arrow so that it can display actually what is happening. And then I can try to explain some views here. So this one, this provides the scope, the transition, provide the scope between 0 to 100, where actually I have that the fragment, the page where I have to transition from this page to the end, and I have a scope of 0 to 100. So between 0 to 100, how many animations do I have to do, or what do I have to do to achieve the animation that I want to achieve? So basically, we'll start us off from there, where I'll try to create the transition now. And it's quite easy. Just after you convert your project to motion layout, then you get these views. You start off by clicking on this arrow, which provides you the scope. And then from the scope, then you can now start off by adding your animation. Let's say we want to start animating this image. So to start animating this image, we actually have to create some keyframes, where keyframes tries to give us how the view will actually look like. And then the keyframes expands what you can do with motion layout, basically, where they allow you to specify a change at a given time during the interpolation between the states, between the start and the end. So keyframes actually help to provide that to you. So starting off at 0, let's say my fragment is at position 0. That's it at the scope, which is 0. Then I'll start off by animating the image, where I'll click on creating keyframes, and then it provides me with more features, where key positions, key attributes, key time cycle, where you don't have to use all of them at the same time, because you can't actually use, you can use all of them, but it's not mandatory to use all of them, because you doesn't have to define all of them at the same time, but you can define most of them as you're working on. So currently we're going to use key attributes, where for the tag is the ID, where I'm working on image view, which is the image that it's being displayed here. So I want the image to navigate a little bit backwards and then come out forward, and then it will transition where the image, the text will now take the position of the image, and then it will also navigate forward. So let me try do exactly what I have explained. Hope I did explain it better. So transition, where we actually want it to be at position 0. Now it's at position 0, and then we actually doesn't need an alpha, which position 0, yes, and then key attributes, and then the attribute that you're going to do on the key attributes, what you're going to explain. Then it provides actually the variety, rotation, what do you want to rotate, you don't want to rotate. Actually, let's give it a scale, where I want the image to reduce at a particular scale when it comes to width and height. So scale X will actually reduce after I give it I define the value, it will now determine how the scale will work. So once I add this one, then I'll have an attribute here, which with scale X, where scale X is 1.2. Let's reduce it to 1, and then that is at position 0. We can also add scale Y, scale Y, where we let it also be let it have a value of 1. So it's just that simple. You can click play to show you how nothing is happening at the moment. So let's add let's add another scope, where we are now going to, let's say, work from position 7. 7 is good, where we are creating a new view for the animation, where we can now create a key attribute at position 7. At position 7, we're still working on the image view, and then we want a scale of Y. Scale of Y, we add it, and then we go and add some various attributes there. So let it be at position 7, let it reduce the size to 0.5, and then let's add one more feature, which is scale X at still 0.5, and then that's good, that's okay. So that one, it scales the image. You see how it's now. I hope you're seeing my screen. Hello?
Yes, we can see your
So
screen.
that's just a simple animation that I've done, but I'm not yet complete. But based on what I've done, that is how it's going to look like. And then as we're moving forward, let's now move to another position on our scope. Let's say at position 10 is good. So at position 10, we want the image as in it started at with an scale X, scale Y of 1, and then I reduced it to 0.5. Now let me increase it from 0.5 to 1.5. So at scale 10, at the scope of 10, the scale X should be scale X. Let's change the attributes a little. Okay, so that is at 10. Let's give the attribute scale of 10. Yeah, so at 10, let it now add to maybe 1.5 here. 1.5, that is good. And then you can add another one, scale of Y to also 1.5. So it's changing based on the scales that I'm giving it. So scale Y reduces the Y-axis, and then scale X works on the X-axis on the image alone. So once I click play, it's now the first two of which were at position 0 and position 7 reduces the size, and then when it reaches at position 10, this scope reaches at position 10, then it increases the size to 1.5. So let's move to position 20, and there now I can reduce a little bit of it to 1, back to 1. Create attribute, position 20, position 20, and it. Create this position, sorry. Okay, let's add this one at position 20. Yeah. At position 20, yeah. So let's reduce it to 1, and then can also add another scale to X to 1. Yeah, that is good. And then from there, now we are still working on this scope of 0 to 100, and currently we are at 20. We can move to 40, where at 40 actually doesn't want it to reduce and so let it remain the way it is. So from 20 now, from 40, I create an attribute of which I don't use the scale, but I use the alpha. So alpha, for those who doesn't know, it's just a fading, controls the alpha levels, where the alpha levels defines the fading in and fading out of the image. So how the image fades in, how the image fades out. So we'll use the alpha here, which is at 40. At frame position 40, my alpha should be 1, and that is good. I can try to play it and then let you see. So you see it's a little bit faster because of my duration. It's actually taking 1 second to do that animation. Now from there I can move to position 50, which is here, where I'll define a scale of X. Key attributes, I'm working that one, and then my scale of X should be 40, position 50, yeah. 50 scale of x should stand in to be 0, and then I can add another scale of y to be at 0, and then it also has an alpha of 0, so the fading should have that level of 0 where the image is not being it's fading, but it's fading up towards 0. It's like it's disappearing off here. Basically, that's so alpha to be 0 also, and then from there now I think I'll move to 100, and at 100 I'll say like my image to have a scale of 0 at the same time, and also scale x, scale y to be 0, and alpha to be 0. So from 50 to 100, it remains to be the same. So it's fading out from the front, then it disappears. The image should take the transition. So at 100, I add the key attribute, which is width at 100, and then alpha, alpha will be 0. Zero. It's okay. So let me create it completely. Scale x, scale y, alpha will be at 0. Keyframe position 0. So yeah, so alpha will be 0. It has shown up. And then scale x will also be 0. And also I'll add another one, scale y to be 0. So that's basically it for our image. I can play it for you to see. But let me add the duration. So that's basically how it will appear when it comes to animating it. So I can increase the duration of the animation so that it can be visible. Sorry?
Excuse me, your laptop is almost going off.
Yeah, I'm putting it on charger. Yeah, it's picking up. Yeah. So basically that's it. So once you are creating the splash screen to motion layout, it provides us with these two views. And when you look at the XML code, you realize that it provides this attribute where it's layout description, where in XML, which is a flag splash screen scene, which is a feature that is created from once you just implement motion layout. Let's navigate there and see. So all the attributes we've been adding are all displayed here, where we started off at position 0. This is actually what was happening. So I actually didn't want to use the XML because for those, it's good to describe when using the view. I hope you understand. So at position 0, I said that our scale x, scale y will be 1, 1 at position 7, frame position 7, then it scale x and scale y will be 0.5, moving forward to position 10, where it was 1.5, 1.5 when it comes to scale x, scale y, to position 10. Position 10 I didn't describe twice, so in case when you're making errors, it's good to actually come and check from the splash from the attribute that is created from the XML that is created, where I actually didn't mention this one. So at position 10, scale x, scale y, it was to remain at 1.5, not this one, so you can delete this one. So it's actually good to also understand the XML bit of it. Then at position 20, I remember it was at 1 to 1, where the image now is showing up clearly. And then position 40, it was to have an alpha of 1. And then moving on to 50, 0, 0 to 100, 0, 0. So that is basically about our image. And then these two, I didn't have it. So once you create the views from the view that you've been given by the Studio and the motion layout, you can still navigate to this XML and try to edit wherever you actually had gone wrong. And it's actually very descriptive when it comes to transition, because this one describes the end of our transition, and this one describes the start of our transition and the duration of the transition. I can choose to put it at 3 seconds, where it will still play a very good animation. So I can move back and animate our image now, our text view, where I still follow the previous process that I've been doing, where I'll still start off at 0 and create an attribute for that one. And then as I move forward, from 0, 7, 10, basically it's the positioning I'm working with. It's similar to the position I've been using for the image. So at position 0, I'll have my transition. Basically, I want the image to transition from where it is to where my text to transition from where it is to where the image is. So at position 0, I'll now use transition X. So transition X cuts across the x-axis. So transition X at position 0 should play at 0 dp. So at position, sorry, didn't choose the best one. Sorry for that one. Let me just clear it out. Yeah, I think it's this one. Yeah, sorry for that. And I can get back now. So at position 0, I'll now create a new attribute where it's a text view I'm working on, the text view, this one, where at position 0, I want it to have a transition X, which shows the transition from the X along the X-axis. So I'll add it up and then follow it up here. So it actually describes the transition that you're going to work on. So at position 0, I want our text view, which is this one, to have 0 dp when it comes to the transition. And then I'll move forward to 7 there, where I'll create a new attribute for it, which is transition Y. When it reaches to 7, then it transitions to Y along the Y axis. So transition Y axis, and for still our text view, and add it up, and then locate it here. It is. So at position 7, I'll still 0 dp. So let's try play it and let's see. So you see it's transitioning. So it's the text view now showing some transition. It comes along the x-axis and the y-axis. It's jumping a little bit and then moving along that axis. So that going along based on how the scope is moving. So from there, we'll move to position 10. Position 10, yes. And position 10, now I'll give our text view. Text view at position 10, it should have scale X and scale Y, where I want it to have different. At scale Y, I want it to have a scale Y of 1, scale X of 1, and then I'll add another one to the scale Y, scale Y of 1. And I'll also add another one, which is, I think that's good because I want it to have a different scaling when it comes to position 10. So that is, I believe that is okay. So moving forward to position 40, let me try and do it a little bit faster. Position 40 to have a transition Y of 0 dp, of which I'll try explain it Let me create it first. In a text view at position 40 is transition Y of so position 40 is position 40. So transition Y should be 0 dp. Yeah, that is good. And then from there I'll move to position 55. So it's a sequential process where you have to follow this scope based on the positions that you want the view to be seen. So at position 5, I'll add another one, which is still working on the text view. You choose your view based on the ID that you have provided there. So at position 55 exactly. So I'll want it to have a scale X, scale Y of around 1.2, 1.2, and then have a negative transition Y. So transition Y, when it moves along the Y axis, I want it to transition from 0, where it was at 40, to negative 90. So negative 90 will give it a different view where it will be transitioning almost like coming up. Yeah. So transition Y of at 55, transition Y should be at negative 90 dp. Yeah, that is okay. And then it will also have some various attributes where it is scaling. Scale X to be 1.2, and then scale Y to be 1.2 still. So it is scaling, and then at the same time it is transitioning. So right now you can see it has moved from its initial position to the previous the position of which at which the image view was. So I can play that one. You can see the transition. That's actually what I'm trying to create. So let me now complete it and make it to perfection. So once it reaches to 55, then it transitions to negative 90. So let's move again to 60. So at 60, I want it to have a different attribute. So at 60, a text view should have the scale Y, scale X at 1.2, and then it will remain to be the transition Y should reduce should be added by 10, where it will now be at negative 80. So at 60, yeah, 60 attribute positioning. Yeah, it's a text view exactly. So sometimes it doesn't show up from the video, so you have to the creator scale X will be 1.2 and scale Y will be also 1.2. Yeah. So at 60, I'll want it to have a scale X of 1.2, and then I can also add another scale Y of 1.2, 1.2 still, and then as I said earlier, it should have a transition of from the negative 90 it was before to negative 80 now. So transition along the x-axis, transition X, transition Y should be at negative 80 dp, and then I'll move forward from there to 90 and then 100. That will make it complete. So to 90, and then I'll create an attribute for that one. Then text view position. Sorry, not created it well. That position 90 attribute position 90. Sorry. So it's a text view, and then I will want it to have a scale of 1.2 scale when it comes to X and Y. So position 90 scale of 1.2, I'll add another one scale of Y to 1.2. So all these attributes just defined by yourself based on how you want the image to be how you want your views to animate. And then I can add another one to be transition when it comes along the Y transition along the Y axis. And then I'll give it negative 80 still. 80 dp, so it will have a different feel when I play it. Now it's like it's moving up from the position it was before. So that's basically what I wanted, because as the image disappears, I want the name to reappear where the image was, and then to this to this to fade off as it moves out. So that's basically what I'm trying to create. So at position 80, I think I'm good. Position 90, and then I'll finish off at position 100. So at position 100, what I want it to scale to 100. Let it the text be to scale to a very big. The scaling should be very big so that it's appearing. The wordings appear to be coming out from the screen. So once it appears that it reaches the scope of 100, then the wording should appear like it's coming out of the screen. So that's basically key attribute at position 100, where scale X should read. Scale X should our text view. Let's just down this text view. Yeah, so let's create another one in still. So it's a text view at 100, scale X, scale Y here. I believe that one will come out. The views. Just clean it up once we get done with scaling here, and then add it up, and then try to locate it exactly. Yeah. You can still use the XML to actually do it. So as I said earlier, we are scaling the text view where we are actually at 100. I realized I had created many of them, and you can actually delete these ones. And at scale at 100, I didn't want the image view at the moment. So at 100, you can just change here to be a text view. Text view, which is the idea of our text view. So at 100, I wanted to scale it to 100, which is a very big view, and then scale Y also, scale Y to 100 dp, sorry, 100 dp. And then once we are done with that one, you can now transition it to 100 along the to 70 along the x-axis. Along the x-axis, transition it to around 70 dp, and then we also transition it along the y-axis to negative 80. So it will come out to be somehow something big. Sorry, even it's not dp, it's 100. And here also it's 100. So when we try to look at the view so that's basically it. So when I try to play, so once it reaches that point, it now flashes out like it's coming out of the screen. So we can clean up on this one. Our text view at position 90 is 1.2, negative 80, exactly at position 60. Try to have a scale of 1.2. So I recreated so many of them. Can delete this one. And we can use this one as scale 90. So it's actually good to actually also have idea of how to work with the XML code itself. And like just here working with the views, sometimes you can create something and then you want to clean it up. So it's actually good to actually understand the XML, also the XML bit of it. So this is at 55, yes, at 40. Yes, that's actually the attribute that I wanted it to take. And then at 10, at 7, and then at 0. So that's for a text view. So one coming exactly, that is it. So can look at a little bit of it. Yeah. So basically that is the first screen, how it's going to animate. So it's going to animate from the position the views are going up, and then displays that view, and then it flashes off. like it's the wordings are coming out. So as I said earlier, for those who doesn't know who haven't worked with Android Studio before, when you create a view, this is the layout that you're actually creating. So using motion layout, it has actually helped us to achieve creating this type of animation, which we actually have in here. So I wanted when the project completes, this view appears, then it's a splash screen. Once it appears, it navigates to a different view. So from the splash fragment, I had created, so let me first give the IDs to our view, which this one, to this main root, the root view, I give it the ID of motion layout. Sorry. ID. Sorry, I already have the attribute for the ID. So it's called splash, motion splash. That's the ID. So from the activity, which is from the fragment itself, which is this one, so I need to have a transition listener, which is this is a class I had created, which just provides the transition, listens on the transition. So the class implements some various methods where it's on transition started, you actually describe whatever you want when the transition starts, and then once the transition gets to completion, this is the method that you actually want to implement when the transition hits the ends, when the transition is complete. So from a splash fragment, I wanted the transition to navigate. Once the transition is complete, it will now navigate to a different fragment. So the different fragment is the main fragment, which is this one. And it's just basically simple. I'll try to recreate something from it. And this is actually how it actually looks. It's just a simple view with an image view, a simple scroll view with some layout. Hello, are you there? Are you guys there?
Yes, you're together.
Okay, so I hope I'm explaining it well. In
Sure.
case
Yeah.
in case of anything, you can freely say it out. And then this is a text view which has some text. Let me just try to change the color, text color maybe to a bit darker, which is black. Yeah. So it actually has some text here, and then this simple view. So let's try to animate this one also, where, as I said earlier, you just right clicks on the view, which is this one that you are provided from the design, by the design. So you click on it and then you navigate to this, convert to motion layout, then you convert your view to motion layout. Once you convert the view, you get this view. So let's just put a very simple view on this image where I want the image to reduce in size as you scroll upwards. So when you scroll upwards, I want the view to reduce in size. So basically it's not that hard. So that is when you're ending. So you click on this transition where I describe the transition of what we are going to work on. So this one, I'll just start off at position 50. I want the view to change its size when it's at position 50. So we're at position 50, it will have an alpha of, let's attribute at position 50 for the image view. Yeah. So at position 50, let the alpha be 0. As I said earlier, alpha is just fading in and fading out. So when it fades to 0, then it's like it's disappearing. So you can see the image has already disappeared. It's way far away. So, and then once it gets to 100, you can see at 50 it disappeared. Now at 100 it's now showing up. So at 100, I also want it to have a different scales where it's scale X and scale Y should be 0, 0, and then also to fade off as it reaches 100. So key attributes, the image view is at 100 alpha. Yes. So basically, can you look at sorry. So this is the view. You can try, after we created the view, as I said earlier, once you just convert your project to motion layout, Android Studio creates a new XML file for you. So that's the XML that describes the attributes of that particular view that you're trying to create. So we can just edit this view also. I said at a 50, it should have an alpha of 0, and then at 100, alpha should also be 0. Okay. And then scale X, scale Y should be 0 dp also, and then scale X should be 0 dp also. That is good. And then you can animate that one so that you can see. So you can see it's like it's disappearing. So as the transition starts, it's like it's disappearing. So that's basically how we actually could do the attributes. Now, apart from just doing that, Android Studio also provides us with different features where we can define here the clicks. We can handle every clicks handling or swipe handling. So for our case, we can do a swipe handler where we want the swipe to have a different to the transition to be done when we are swiping on our screen. So the drag, the start to end should be that one. The drag direction should just stay to be drag up, and then anchors to be bottom. So I'm sliding from the bottom towards up. That's when the transition will happen. So you can add that one, and then once it say transition, the view will now be once we scroll, we swipe on our screen, the view will now be disappearing once we play it out very well. So that's basically how you actually do work with transition motion layout. You create a view, you convert it to motion layout. Once you can convert to motion layout, you get a different XML file which is created by you from there by Android Studio. And then once you get this view, now you start working on the transition on how to do the transition. So basically, the start is actually describes the view as when the page starts, and then the view, the end describes the view as it will be when after the transition has happened. So I can now explain the other bit of it. So I had said earlier, once we start the activity, it will start us off from the splash fragment, where the splash fragment will now display the fragment that I had actually been creating before, where the image will fade inside, come out again, and then it will change the view. Let me share my screen on that. Let me play it. Then, sorry, let me check on that one a little. Oh, sorry. Scale X, scale Y should be 0, not 0 dp. Yeah, it's actually good to also understand the XML bit of it. That's why I tell you. So let me play it so that I can share my screen also. So let's see what will happen once the project starts, and then I can explain anything. So that's the view that you'll get, then it will transition, and then finally that's it. So once you we kind of get back so that you can see it again. So that's actually the basic view, then it fades out away. So this is just a simple animation that I've actually created. And then, as I said earlier, once you start swiping on this screen, it is when that the image will now be fading away. So it's a simple animation. Can now you see I'm swiping on the screen, so the image is fading away. So once it reaches 50, it doesn't show up. So the alpha level is actually at level 0. So that's why once it reaches 50, it fades out away. So as it moves from 50 to 100, it's fading away. So you can see that's basically it. And then splash screen. This is just a screen that will show up for a particular period of time, and then it goes out. So I think I have explained what motion layout and how you can use it. In case of any question, you can ask. This is just basic code I wrote where I delay the screen for 2 seconds. So after the 2 seconds, it's when it runs this code, this particular code runs, where it navigates me from the particular particular fragment I am to the new fragment that I had actually created, this main fragment, which is the view that you're actually having at the moment, this one. So so as it's starting off, it delayed the screens for 2 seconds. Once the transition, once I implement the transition listener on, and then I implement the method of transition completed. Then after the transition completes, now I navigate to these fragments that we are seeing currently. So, Lasta,
Yes,
hello.
yes, yeah, yes, Daniel. Wow,
Mhm,
thank you so much. I think personally I've enjoyed the session. So
mhm.
thank you so much for that.
In
Uh,
case, yes, in case of any questions now, then you can ask.
yes, now the floor is open to everybody to shoot their questions. I remember there's a lady called Lorraine. Lorraine Chep somebody. She wants to ask me some question that has been answered in this presentation. I don't know if she's around, but I doubt. You can
Mhm.
just check attendance. So somebody wants to ask me some question that
Yeah.
has been explained clearly here. I wish she was around. And I'm so
Okay.
happy. But anybody who is having a question or a worry, kindly, this the time. Let's take this time to ask it from a professional with industry experience. It's a honor, by the way, to have you today. Personally, I've loved the presentation. It's so insightful and informing. So
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
just
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the compliment.
I'm just being honest, but so